นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมสสามิ So, offer my respects to the assembly, the Venerable Bhikkhus and the lay disciples. Occasion coming together to commemorate Luang Por Cha and of course primarily Luang Por Cha's practice. And if we're really commemorating it and taking it seriously, it's the practice of Luang Por Cha that we want to keep going, celebrate it and keep it well rehearsed and well practiced. So it's personally for me it's very heartening to be offered the occasion to come and spend time with so many other good bhikkhus. It feels very happy and very comfortable just to have that sense of people I haven't seen for years, getting together. And so that's a lovely feeling. And also just to notice the way that the event has been created and noticing the number of people participating. And something that just struck a note through the day is the way that everyone's called brother or sister, and the brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. And that touched something in me, the sense in which there's a very clear indication that we're all on the same level of cooperating, wherever we are in terms of our karma or our purification process or whatever. We're all brothers and sisters in terms of cooperating, working together. And I don't know how you've managed to create this occasion. I can't imagine the amount of organising that's been going on to get this thing happening. But I get some idea because I've done a few of them myself, and you all seem to have done it and looking happy and cheerful and not burnt out and worn out by it all. So this is a very good sign that it's practicing, cooperating in a way that's seen itself as a Dharma practice. Whatever happens, that we've worked together to generate something that has brought everyone together. And I noticed that there are several different groups involved. And as a newcomer here, just looking around, I couldn't imagine. It's not clear who's in charge of it. It doesn't look like one person is in charge of it. It looks like everybody gets a chance to help out and participate. And this is a really good sign. It's a sense of people cooperating. It's a happy feeling. Particularly because cooperation is one of the things that is a clear indication of people's purity. People look for attainments and samadhi and so forth, and special realizations, but a really important realization, a really important standard of someone who has practiced purity is their ability to cooperate. And this is the standard for Luang Por Cha's monasteries, and the thing that he emphasized perhaps more than other teachers. And now we have something like 300 monasteries, over 300 monasteries, somehow trying to work together from the diversity from New Zealand up to Canada. That's the global span. And yet somehow monks from New Zealand and Canada and Thailand and everywhere get together here and feel we're just exactly in the same space. Now that, to me, is a profound realization that is not subject to egotism. It's not like I am so special, there's something so wonderful about me, but something so wonderful about the practice. And the practice is often the simple, apparently simple, deceptively simple process of learning to listen, have different opinions, different perspectives, and yet see that the most important thing is that we can work together. It's not who's going to be the best, the brightest, the most important, but what's the beautiful Dhamma. Now you consider that the human condition is like this, that not one single one of us could have got born on our own. We needed 2 people at least to even get conceived, and you need a whole team of people to get you born, and a whole group of people working 24 hours a day to get you clothed, fed, brought up, educated, constantly. Throughout your life you have brothers, sisters, friends, employers. You're continually in contact with other people. You depend upon other people growing food, transport, so forth. There's nothing in your life on an ordinary level that you can do without other people. Even when you die, you need other people to help you die, and then other people to bury you. And yet, what is the single most difficult thing for people to do? Is to cooperate, to get on with each other. And you see it happening everywhere. Politicians can't cooperate, religions can't cooperate, even monks can't cooperate, because everybody's stuck in their own me-mind position. And it really is a profound constant, not a moment flash in the pan special meditation experience, but a constant training to learn how to experience a sense of letting go of oneself into something that we respect, that is beautiful and has room for all of us to gather in, whether the youngest, the oldest, the most venerated, the most seemingly insignificant, all have a place here. And noticing just during this short time how really, although we naturally were all venerating, at the moment we're venerating Luang Por Sumedho as the most senior monk, actually he's playing in some respects a very small part. And it looks the senior, junior thing. A lot of this is the more junior monks are doing the organising, and they just tell the senior ones what to do, and we just happily go along with it and fit in. And that's a kind of, it's so easy like that when you trust each other. And cooperation, when you have 300 monasteries, is quite a process. It's work. Because naturally, every single one of us can only see things through our own eyes as individuals. And every single one of us has different perceptions, different sensitivities, different ways of being affected by things, different energies, different ways in which we feel happy or unhappy, experience pleasure and pain. And somehow we have to recognize that, respect that, and yet find a way in which we can honor and respect, listen to others, and find a path of mutuality. Whenever this goes wrong, there's a big mess happens. When somebody thinks they're doing it on their own, then mess. We lose the Dhamma. Becomes another self-trip. Now, it seems to me that we can look at the quality of cooperation as being dependent, simply speaking, for around two themes. There may be more, but just for the sake of brevity, one is the sense of respect. Respect, which is it's a very special term. It's not love, it's not affection, it's not who's better, it's just a sense of respecting, which means that we always keep our own minds, our own attitudes, our own perspectives just a little bit in check, because we realize there's something bigger, greater, more beautiful, when my own position could be held in something larger. And there's something larger that one can respect. So often that can be the teacher. When you have someone like Luang Por Cha, you can recognize this is a being who is deeper, wider, more fathomless than I am. I can respect that. The big challenge comes when the teacher passes away, and we have to somehow hold the teacher as a virtual reality, What would Luang Por Chah do in this situation? What would he recommend? What would he be pleased by? What would he be displeased by? Yeah. So the respect is towards the harmony of the Sangha, towards the good practice of the Dhamma, towards particular standards that we train in. And we're holding that up. Yeah. From the most senior to the most junior, we're all trying in that direction. And to see that you also are participating in this, like I notice you're all wearing these very simple clothes, white and black clothes. You couldn't tell who's wealthier, who's less wealthy, who's more important. It's just all, doesn't matter. Yeah. And so it's this sense of that the apparent appearances that the world makes so much of are to be put aside. There's something greater that we can all offer ourselves to. Now the greater is really the path and the goal, the path and the fruits. For most of us are aspirants rather than accomplished ones. We have some accomplishments, but I think, speaking personally, I don't feel I have completely accomplished all that needs to be done. The number of completely arahants in the world is rather few. Most of us are aspirants. We aspire, we try, we work on it. And so that means that most of our practice is about path, simply in terms of sustaining the right kinds of effort, the efforts that are about restraining the defilements, the efforts that are about upholding the pure and the good, and not just as ideas but as practices. Restraining the defilements and upholding what's good. And mostly then this is about, brings us into contact with the quality of the whole training in restraint and relinquishment. And so this is what separates or is very much heightened in a good training monastery, which separates it perhaps from a meditation center. In the West particularly, meditation centers are very popular. People like to go there for 10-day retreats, 2-week retreats, even month retreats, 3-month retreat. And the big emphasis is how long can you get to sit? How long can you get to not have any responsibility to sit? How long can you, how intense can you get in your meditation? Yeah. And sometimes people go crazy doing this. Or they don't go crazy, they come out of the retreat center and okay, so one day you're in this quite pleasant, peaceful state, and then gradually your defilements keep coming back again. The pettiness, the jealousies, the desires, and so forth. So, although meditation is, for many people, and perhaps for all of us, it's a highly respected aspect of the training, it is an aspect of the training that needs to sit within something much wider. And the wider field that the meditation sits in is our life, our daily life. Our life is based upon lifting up the good, sustaining the good, respecting the good, whether it's in ourselves or in others, honouring it, venerating it. Even if it's the good of other people, we can still feel that sense of mudita and uplift that comes with honouring. When you honour something, really truly honour it, you feel your heart lift. So this is a quality of right effort because it lifts up. It's called kusala supasampada. It's like fully accepting, lifting up that which is good. We lift it up. We recollect it every day. We remember it. We say this is not something that is impossible to achieve. It is possible. It's something to work towards. And the other feature is the putting away or the restraining what is defiling, or confusing, irrelevant, entangling. So in a monastery there is the honouring, the respecting, the puja, the chanting, respecting the training, respecting the elders, respecting the Dhamma, and there's the clearing away of the defilement. And clearing away is often less glamorous, less beautiful. It's work, gritty work, hard work, tough work sometimes. restraining. And we need a lot of encouragement to do that. So when I first entered a monastery, then this was the most immediate thing, was the need to restrain. I realized, I went to one meditation session when I was in Thailand. I happened into a meditation class. I went to one meditation session. I did 15 minutes of meditation. I thought, this is what I want to do. There's no way I can do this on my own. I don't have the restraint. I don't have the discipline. There's no way. I'm not going to do this unless I got something that really holds me down, ties me down, restricts me. I had enough wisdom to realize, what I was working with. So I better get to a monastery quick. So after one session, I asked the teacher, can I go to a monastery? It was that quick. It was that immediate. And he said, sure, you can go to a monastery. You can come to the monastery. Okay, so I go down there, and that's what I have to do. And they take me to see the abbot, and he says, well, you have to, what do you want? He said, what do you want? I said, I want to stop wanting. He said, good. I think there's a place for you here. And I thought, I don't care what I do. I have to stand on my head, whatever. I'll do whatever it takes to just stop this restless desire and craving in my life. Because up until then, I'd spent all my time just trying to satiate myself with desires. And I got to the point at 25 years old, and I felt completely burnt out. Like there was no more sense pleasure I could cram in that I hadn't had and done, and it still wasn't enough. And I realized it's like a sponge. It was so full of water, it couldn't take any more water. What it really needed is just to be gently squeezed, just to press it all out. Need some more space. So that was it. I had that very clear realization, the need for restraint. Monastery, 8 precepts I started with. And the meditation first of all was I could get to sit still for 10 minutes. And I had never sat still for 10 minutes without fidgeting, without scratching something, scribbling something, eating something, looking at something, just to sit still for 10 minutes. When I thought I could sit still for 10 minutes, I thought this is a major achievement. Then it got so I could sit still for 10 minutes and then walk up and down, and eventually I got up to being able to sit still for an hour. I thought, I'm nearly there. Nibbana must be on its way. And I thought, well, I've done this within 3 weeks. 3 months ought to be enough to get Nibbana. I'm a bit slow, but 3 weeks ought to be enough. That was how deluded. But over time, as we began to see, the fidgeting of the body is one thing. You can stop that relatively easy. You can even restrain yourself from eating in the evening, sexuality, music. That takes some work, but still you can do it. But that's just the beginning. And developing restraint. And it's so helpful. I stayed there for 3 years in that monastery, just doing meditation all the time. But what really helped me change was coming into contact with Luang Por Sumedho, I met seemingly by chance, and then learning to live with other bhikkhus, which I wasn't doing in this other place. It was just an isolated meditation center, sitting on your own. It was a monastery, but it had a meditation section in it that they put people in. So it was like it had one aspect of the path, but the rest of it wasn't there. So when I had learned to live with other bhikkhus, and this was Ajahn Sucitto, Ajahn Viradhammo, Ajahn Anando, it was just a few of us in London. And we had to cooperate, live together, and it was difficult. It was noisy, it was cramped, and it was not much space to move around. It wasn't gladdening. Then we moved to Chithurst House, which was a lot more space, but the place was a wreck. And it meant work, physical work, shoveling bricks, rubble, cement, and there's no heat. Yeah. So it was so cold that the breath used to moisturize and condense on the walls. So the walls would have these rivers running down them because the walls were so cold that the people's breath used to condense on the wall and it would run down the wall and just shiver. We worked on that. Just as we were getting that tidied up, before that I had to go to Harnham, which was even worse. There was no heat there either. And that was in the north of England. The snow used to come under the door. And we had no heat and one water tap with cold water in it. So, restraint, it was actually, it was more or less forced on us. Yeah. And then we started Amaravati in 1984, and that was freezing cold too. I thought there was something about starting monasteries in England where you also started somewhere freezing cold. Amaravati, the first year they decided they couldn't afford to pay for the oil that used to heat these buildings, they switched it off. And it was the coldest winter in Britain in decades, 17 degrees below. And it was 10 degrees below in the Vihara. So you're living in a room that's 10 degrees below, you put everything you got on your body, get into a sleeping bag at night. In the morning you unzip, you rush out, just because you know that over in the meditation hall there's one fire. So you run over to meditation somewhere where there's just other human bodies, you get some feeling of being slightly warmer. And that went on for 2 or 3 months like that before we got heat in. And that was tough, but in a way it was beautiful because there was no choice. So the mind, with that, you realize your mind has to stay within that. If you start thinking of warmth, you're going to suffer so much if you just stop thinking about it. So in a way it was a wonderful gift. It was a gift of seeing how if you keep your mind steady, external suffering doesn't have to turn into internal suffering. And if you don't control your mind, suffering will just start happening automatically, wherever you go. Yeah. Because then when things got more comfortable, the mind had a little more room, you can start complaining, criticizing, finding fault with other people, thinking the routines weren't right. People didn't work hard enough. There's too much work to do. Yeah? Yeah. The talks are too long. There's not enough teaching. There's too many people here. There's not enough people here. The food isn't right. One way or another. Your mind can start doing this and complaining about other people. So after a while, we began to see that the real restraint was much more voluntary and to do with training the mind, not so much in terms of the senses, although that's always important, but in terms of the mind itself. Training the mind not in terms of how the mind flows out into the sense world, which is certainly an aspect of restraint, but how the mind flows out into its own creations, its imaginations, its fantasies, its judgments, its opinions, of which we are all, I'm sure, liberally endowed. And this is where cooperation becomes really, really crucial. I think for me one of the turning points was, I think, my second Vasara at Amaravati, and it was a very confusing time. There were so many people from different countries, not everybody even spoke English, people at different stages. Some people were just wanderers who came in slightly deranged, people with psychotic problems. And it was very confusing, chaotic. And I decided that for the Rains retreat, I would take up the resolution of not complaining. Not even complaining in my mind. I mean, I could stop the speech, but actually to get into the mind and stop the complaining thought as it came up. Just that moment when something irritating, disappointing happens, something you don't approve of, somebody's misbehaving, something's too long, too short, too hot, too cold, not fair, not the way I do it. Just get to that point and stop. And I made that adhitthana, that resolution. And it was really transformative because I began to really sense how irritating life is when you're living in a group. How irritating it can be, how irritating the mind can find it. Because there's absolutely nobody who thinks like I do in exactly the same way. We're all very different. Yeah. I think, why is he doing it so slowly? Why doesn't she do that? Why does he have to keep saying that? Why is she always late? Why don't people understand this? Why is the tea so terrible? Yeah. And I just get to that point where the mind was about to say that, and this resolution would come up, you can't complain. You just have to experience that dukkha, the suffering, and relax. And this makes the mind very strong, but also compassionate when you recognize this is happening for everybody. Everybody wants to get things their way, and nobody can do it. Isn't that the same for you? You like things to go your way? Does it happen? Happens for a little while, and then something goes wrong, doesn't it? You think, if only. Yeah. Get to that point. Yeah? Really get the sense of that. Nothing ever goes wrong. Nothing really ever goes wrong, apart from your mind loses its agility and its ability to restrain its desires and let go. That's what goes wrong. That's the only thing that goes wrong. Everything else is just going in accordance with nature. When you see that point, then your practice gets very simple, and it's also all day long. Meditating, not meditating, alone, with people, at work, eating, whatever you're doing, that point where the mind starts to want, suffer, don't see it, that's the point. And this is what's so thoroughly trained in monasteries, because nothing goes one's way. There's often things about time. Things don't happen in accordance with the clock. They say we'll be here at 10, 10:15. But you can never know whether it's going to be 10 o'clock or 10:15. You just have to realize there'll probably be waiting involved. Nothing happens in accordance with time. Nothing is that predictable. You're in a situation which seems very predictable. You've got the vinaya, the training, the routines, yet actually it's always shifting. There's always new people coming, different things happening, and you have to stay on the ball. Yeah. Is the Ajahn going to give a talk tonight? Don't know. What's for the meal today? Don't know. Sometimes will it turn up? Don't know. And learning to widen one's mind, to include all that, is very much the way to peace, to harmony. You begin to see and pinpoint this quality of craving, which at first seems so innocuous and so harmless and so sensible. It's to do with what they call bhava tanha, the desire to become, the desire to arrive somewhere, the desire to get things done, the desire to feel complete, the desire for the future. And the future is a complete creation of the mind. It's one of the papanchas, or the proliferations of the mind. None of us have any future whatsoever. You may think I'm being poetic here, but now is the present. Now there is no future. We don't have a future. We have the present, and the present keeps changing. What manifests in it keeps changing in accordance with the conditions and the energies, the causes, the karma that's happening. It keeps changing. So yeah, in a few minutes' time this will be different. But we don't have a future. We have a present that keeps changing. Yet most people, most of the time, imagine the future. They imagine and they move towards the future. The mind is continually leaning towards the future. Towards next year. Towards when I retire. Towards when I have the baby. Towards when I finally get enough money. And the future keeps moving ahead of us all the time. As long as you believe in it, it keeps moving out of your reach. You never arrive there. And then you're dead. Where was the future then? So to restrain oneself from the future, because you realize the more that we follow that energy, the less and less we're living balanced in the present. The more we're creating the conditions that support suffering. The future, when you contemplate it, is either desire or anxiety. What will I be? What should I talk about? What should I do? Will it be okay? Is it right? Is it not right? Or when I get there, it'll be fine. When I have that, it'll be good. It's either desire or anxiety. And you don't want the future. The future is desire and anxiety. And it's a subtle form of mental creation that the world in general believes in, is pushing us towards. Why it's so important to cut it. And generally we cut it with contemplation of death, maranusati. Yeah. And it's one of the reflections the Buddha said, this one you can't do too often. And he said 3 times a day, that's not, every time I eat food, no, he says, one monk said, every time I breathe in, I contemplate death. Every time I breathe out, I contemplate death. He said, that's about the measure. If you can't do it that often, you should at least do it every day. So at the end of the day, you think, if I die tonight, look at what do I take with me? What is the state of my heart? Is it bearing grudges? Is it craving? Is it worried? What's it doing? It's time to finish it now. It's time to finish it now, because for countless births, this desire, this becoming, has dragged us through birth after birth after birth after birth, struggling, never accomplishing things, fighting, crying, weeping, wailing, on and on. That's what it's dragged us through that. Now is the time to stop it, to cut it off. Yeah. And monasteries are great places for that, for cutting off the future. Training is that. But for lay people, really just maranusati. Remember it. Is there anything here I'd regret, that I'd like to ask forgiveness for? Is there anything here that I need to put aside? Anything here I'd like to focus on, as if this is my last moment? What would I carry? Gratitude, purity, relinquishment. What's that? This is a really important daily meditation. It takes 10 minutes, half an hour, but 10 minutes will do it. So if you never have time to meditate, you should at least do this. Maranusati. The past. What is the past? Nostalgia and regret. The good old days. Yeah. Regret. Finishing the past. Restraining oneself from that. Yeah. These are the great proliferations of the mind. Do you ever have a mind that's continually going back to something that happened in the past? It's like you're in a tribunal. I never did this. They always did that. Why should I have done that? She did that to me 15 years ago. the tribunal mind. Do you ever want to get out of the courthouse? Finish it. The other great proliferations that we need to be careful around are self and others. Praise and all the praise and blame that goes on with that. Who am I? What am I? How am I? What do people think of me? What was I? What was I in part of my past life? What will I be in my future life? Having done this, what will I be? Why am I? Am I better than? Am I worse than? Am I the same as? This kind of continual agitation around building up this sense of self. Self is purely a proliferation. When you look into it, what's there? Agitation, need, proliferation. And the Buddha said, when you contemplate this experience we call the self-view, one who rightly attends to it, who attends to it clearly, recognizes this is suffering. This is where it originates. This is where it stops. This is the path. So just bringing back how much of yourself is contributing to suffering, comparing yourself with others, so on. And, in true practice, our standards are always to come out of that comparison. This is why in Sangha life you have the whole seniority piece, seniority junior. It may sound like it seems very comparative, but the point of it is to remove any sense of who's better, because it's just who's been here longer. Doesn't mean just because I've been here longer than some doesn't mean I'm wiser. It just means I've been here longer. So having a conventional sense of structuring like that helps to remove the other forms of comparisons. Once you've been in the life long enough, you realise you're always junior to somebody else, you're always senior to somebody else. And the whole self and other bit starts to, don't make anything out of it. Other people who are our heroes, people who are our villains. There's always someone we can get together and gossip about as being bad, or somebody we can venerate. And really other people are again what we proliferate around, what we perceive as skillful or unskillful. And what other people teach us is to just look, as if you keep creating other people, they start to live inside you. If you create other people, they live inside you. So you can spend your life with a whole lot of other people living inside you. People you're always arguing with. People you're always worrying about. So your mind gets very crowded, full of all these people. They start talking to you after a while. Telling you what they think of you. And you're fighting with these people. So our practice is, how do we meet this world of apparent others without taking people in? And we just see, this is an unskillful Dhamma, that's a skillful Dhamma. This is a Dhamma that I respect and revere. This is a Dhamma that I don't respect. The people leave. The people leave your mind, and you know what you need to know, which is not who, but what is skillful and what's unskillful, and you see it around you. So other people can be our best teachers in many respects. In one respect, they show us skillful and unskillful Dhammas. And by and large, it's from other people that we learn to be human. You can learn many things from books book learning is highly praised, but the real learning you get from other people. Learning to be upright, learning to be patient, learning to be gentle, learning to be resolute. This you only get because you see other people doing it. Yeah. Other people then are an invaluable support. The Buddha said the Sappurisa, the real person of integrity, is an essential requirement for stream entry. So when you have someone, Luang Por Cha, even though his body has passed away, still you have the skillful Dhammas that you can still remember, pick up, talk about, give the anecdotes for, and then it stays with you. So in this respect, other people are a great teacher. And other people who annoy us, who disappoint us, who betray us, who seem unworthy, they're also great teachers, because they teach us that if we make their unskillful Dhammas into a person, their person will stay inside me forever, quarrelling, disputing, causing me to feel angry and upset. So instead we say, that's just an unskillful Dhamma. May that person find their way out of that delusion. This is the appropriate response. So when we learn to live like this, we learn to live in a world of mixtures of good and bad, skillful, unskillful, villains, heroes, and we learn to live unperturbed, steadied, clarified by that. And this really is the way that we gather ourselves into a Dhamma that is vast, universal, and unshakable. It's not something you put in a little box. It's not something you have for half an hour a day. It's not something you get after 10 years of focusing on a particular point. It's a Dhamma that's immediate, accessible here and now, and leads us onward. This is why I respect it so highly. These are the epithets of the Buddha's teaching. So I'll close this talk for the evening, and once again offer my respects to the Assembly for all your efforts and your practice, and I hope you know yourselves what efforts you've made that have been skillful for you, for your welfare, for the welfare of others, and if it's for both of our welfares, it will be that which clears away the defilements, the stress, the suffering, and will lead us to Nibbana. Ewan.